Free Tibet. I wish I could do that. But Mao already did. A tragic event of somebody whose mind was highly, highly deluded, probably with all the propaganda that they consumed and their hatred in their body and delusions in the mind, decided to barbecue himself at the headquarters of New York United Nations, and therefore this person lost its life. And this is a case of a Tibetan. And this is your favorite half Chinese. And today we're going to talk about this. What actually went on in his head? The actual reasons, actually it's not really that clear. They try to make it about the national unity law or ethnic unity law of China, because it came out just a couple of days before, according to this article, which I think is not entirely correct, but hey, it's CNN. Anyway, I highly doubt it. If he loves his people, then I don't see what is the problem with that ethnic unity law. I highly recommend people to just go into the government site of China and just download it. You can get an English version, so you can read for yourself what it actually is. But what really, really, really bothers me is that there are people in the Tibetan community outside of Tibet, so living in the West, that do have these extreme radical tendencies. And it just shows it's not the first time. And nobody can dispute that this is extremely, extremely radical. And nobody is there to help these people mentally, not even Dalai Lama. In fact, he just keeps silence on it. He's not saying, hey man, maybe you should not be doing that. It's not good. Because first of all, it's not going to help you. Second of all, if it would be from Dalai Lama's point of view, if he is still considering himself a Buddhist, it is extremely bad for these people, their karma, and should be warned not to do that, because it literally is going to mess up your karma. And politically, it's just not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. It's just waste. Just waste. I hope that people, maybe one of them is watching my video and will sit down and think like, oh yeah, maybe Mr. Fong is right, although I don't agree with all his videos or whatever, but I think he is right. I should not barbecue myself, because it's not going to change the situation, and I'm going to screw up my karma, not to mention hurt the people around me that love me. This deed is so extremely egoistic and actually extremely foolish. But it's very sad that people have been driven by, I would think, all this anti-China propaganda, that their minds have been totally deluded into doing these kind of things. I mean, it's not going to change anything. If you want to change something in China, you need to go to China and get into the government. That's the only way. A lot of times people say that you're not allowed to do Tibetan culture in China, etc., etc. And so I'm going to show a couple of videos. This is very typical. This is obviously a monk, and these are the prayer flags behind it. And he's standing there on a mountain, and clearly it's a monk. And this is on Red Note, or Xiaohongshu for the Chinese people. Clearly it is okay. Here you see them writing their language. It's kind of weird that there are people that say that they're not allowed to write and speak their language, etc., while clearly that is not the case. In fact, I also have a video, I believe, where I show something in a Tibetan school that they're literally learning Tibetan. Here you see another nice gentleman with some other typical Tibetan clothes. And as you see behind, you can see clearly it's very, very, very Tibetan. And again, you see their language right behind, right? It's stupid to say that they're not allowed to. And here you have a girl dancing in their beautiful dress, by the way. How are they not allowed to have their own culture while it is all over the media? You can see a monk right here, right? And as you can see, all these buildings, it's very, very Tibetan culture like. So, yeah, I don't know. As even these prayer rolls, whatever, I forgot the name, what it was. Uh, very, very Tibetan. And you can see right there, right? Also on the street, you see here the Tibetan. So, yeah, I don't know what is the problem with it. By the way, in the West, you don't see these kind of things in ethnic minority groups places, and this is actually very interesting because this is about showing the serfs, and this here it actually says 16 article code. The code stipulated that people were divided into 3 classes by blood and position, and that each class was further divided into 3 ranks. The value of a life corresponded to the difference in class and rank. Just let that sink in. The value of a life corresponded to the difference in class and rank. This is so horrible. This is literally an apartheid system and actually goes against all Buddhist values, right? And here it shows all these kind of things and a little bit on how they lived with the pictures, etc. That was the reality before 1950 something. That was the reality of 95% of Tibetans to live like that. I mean, seriously. Now, again, we can see here, this is clearly from a festival. As you can see, it's very, very Buddhist. Like, clearly, they can do their culture, right? It's all open and all over the internet. I mean, if this wasn't allowed, you would think that it would be on Chinese social media floating around openly, right? Here you have another beautiful girl with the, I always like the clothing. It's very beautiful. Very, very beautiful. Right? And also again with the Tibetan language on top of the Chinese language. Oh yeah, this is always nice. The Tibetans, I believe I had this one in a video already once. They're debating. This is the way that they're debating. Look, a whole group of monks debating, but they want to make you believe that you're not allowed to practice Buddhism. Really? I mean, seriously, this is typical for Tibetan Buddhism. This is the way that they debate. And here, oh, this is nice. The clothing, right? Let me see. Look at those 2 rock stars. Look very, very nice. Said that it is a bad loading video. But very, very nice, right? So how can you say that the Tibetan culture is being erased? It never ever has been as alive as much as today. Why? Because now everybody can enjoy that culture. In the past, it was only 5% who could wear these beautiful clothes and go to school, have access to all sorts of basic needs for humans. Anyway, we're going to see how it really, really, really was in Tibet. So for this, I use the Google AI system. Otherwise, people are going to scream, "Oh, CCP propaganda, you're using Chinese media." So here it says, before 1959, Tibet operated under a feudal serfdom system where the vast majority of the population, around 90 to 95%, were classified as serfs, sir, sorry if I don't pronounce it correctly. They were legally bound to estates owned by the three major feudal lords: the government, the aristocracy, and the great monasteries. The serf population was divided into three main classes based on their economic status and obligations. One was the Tralpa. I say the name incorrectly. Sorry, I cannot speak Tibetan. That was the tax-paying serfs, the Tuchong, smallholders or outsiders, and then you have the Nangtang, domestic slaves, house serfs, and I believe this one was the lowest of all, and those were sleeping with cattle, and those were talked about, and the people would say things like, "Oh, my dogs eat better than my serfs." This is how 90 to 95% of the population of Tibet were actually treated by those elites of the 5%, normally is what they call them. And then you had below them even the Nangtang, where the Rigyapa, I'm sorry, I cannot pronounce it, who performed tasks considering spiritual unclean, such as butchers, blacksmiths, and those handling corpses, sky burials, and lived entirely outside the formal social structure. And this, everything what is in here is going against Buddhist values. The Buddha himself was against slavery. How can you have systems like this? Because these are systems of slavery, right? I mean, serfdom is kind of like that. And here you have the Ula system, mandatory transport labor. So they had free labor and animals. When an official traveled through an area, the local serfs were legally required to provide free lodging, food, and pack animals free, all for free. Give it to somebody that you don't even know, right? While you already have nothing. Disruption of farming, serfs often had to drop their own urgent harvesting or planting to fulfill an ula demand. If a serf's animal died during the grueling mountain journeys, the serf received no compensation and had to bear the economic loss alone. The Ula ticket. Officials carried written documents or tokens issued by the Lhasa government specifying how many animals and porters they were entitled to demand from each village along their route. That's just straight out thievery. And that is what this man barbecued himself for. So this is what this man actually wanted for his people. What else would you want? Because all of this changed after the Communist Party. Then you have the legal code and class banners systems. The value of a life, the life price. If a person was murdered, the killer had to pay a life price to the victim's family. The code stated that the life price of a person from the highest class, a high lama or noble, was worth its weight in gold. Conversely, the life price of a person from the lowest class, a nangtang, a blacksmith, or butcher, was worth only the price of a straw rope. What? Asymmetrical punishment. If a serf committed a crime against a noble, the punishment were severe and physical. Common legal punishment for serfs included flogging, branding, public shackling, gouging out eyes, cutting off noses or ears, and hamstringing. However, if a noble killed or severely injured a serf, the noble rarely faced physical punishment. They were typically only required to pay a minor financial fine or compensation to the estate owner for damaging their property. Not to the family of that serf, but to the estate owner. No rights to dispute. Serfs could not legally sue their masters or appeal to higher courts against the ruling of their local feudal lord, who held absolute administrative and judicial power over his estate. And they also could not just choose where they can work or whatever. They had no access to clean water. They had no access to medical. They had no access to school. They had nothing. So for the people that say, we don't want the Communist Party, blah, 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 free Tibet. This is what you are championing for. Anyway, let's see what happened after that. Following the fundamental political shifts in the 1950s, referred to by the Chinese central government as the democratic reform of Tibet, the centuries-old feudal serfdom system was formally abolished. This led to a radical restructuring of both the legal status and the daily living conditions of the former serfs. Here's how education infrastructure and the legal system changed for the lower classes. The introduction of modern secular education. Before the 1950s, a secular education system did not exist in Tibet. Schooling was almost exclusively the domain of monasteries and focused on religious texts for monks and the children of the nobility. The literacy rate among the general population was around 95%. The first public schools started in the 1950s and 1960s. The government established the first free secular primary school and secondary school accessible to the children of former serfs. Wow, that's a change. Hold on. That reminds me of this wonderful, wonderful book, The Struggle for Modern Tibet from Tashi Tsering. A wonderful book to read. This dude went through so much in Tibet. He used to be a private dancer of the Dalai Lama when he was a little kid. But he always wanted to study. And so all these things happened and Dalai Lama left. And then he could break free. I think he was also caught one time. But anyway, he found a way that he could get out of there and then start to study. And then he went back to Tibet. And what he wanted is to open schools. And I believe that he was one of the first ones to open a school. Maybe he was even the first one to open a school for everybody. He also went through the Cultural Revolution, and it's very interesting that his own people told the government that he was a spy, and he had to undergo a lot of things, and it's describing everything in the book. He's very open about it. So I highly recommend people to read it. It's a great, great read if you want to understand the situation, how it was back then in Tibet. Anyway, you have the modern curriculum. The curriculum was updated to include subjects like mathematics, science, history, and geography. A bilingual education model was introduced with instructions provided in both Tibetan and Mandarin. In both Tibetan and Mandarin. That means it is in Tibetan and Mandarin. Wow. They're being educated in two languages. We don't even have that in the Netherlands, that I was not taught Chinese, and the Moroccan people and the Turkish people here are not being taught Turkish and Arabic in school. But it happens in China. And the same goes for the United States. There's no school that is giving the language of all those tribes. None. It's all in English. But it happens in China. But it is exactly these countries that are criticizing China about this. What? Do we see the hypocrisy now? Do we see the hypocrisy? Honestly, I don't know how much more clear it must become. Higher education institutions like the Tibet University in Lhasa and special minority institutes in cities like Beijing and Chengdu were opened. This trained the children of the farming and working class to become teachers, doctors, engineers, and government officials, creating upward social mobility for the first time in Tibetan history. Wow. For the first time, they were not tied to a landlord and being treated like crap. But for the first time, they could actually go to school, get a diploma, and or certificate, whatever it is that they get, and become a doctor, become a lawyer, become a master of your own life, instead of the estate owner as a master of your life. So anybody who is screaming free Tibet, I want you to explain what exactly is it that you mean by that. Because it looks to me that Tibet has been freed from those 5% class that thought it was okay to oppress the 95%. Infrastructure, transport networks, the construction of the Qinghai-Tibet Railway, and an extensive network of highways connected the isolated region with the rest of China. This made the transport of goods, foods, and medical supplies significantly cheaper and more efficient. And it could reach, again, everybody, not just 5%. Healthcare. Before the reforms, medical care of the lower classes was limited to traditional Tibetan medicine or religious rituals. A network of modern state-funded hospitals and clinics were established. This contributed to a sharp rise in life expectancy for Tibetans, which grew from about 35 years in 1950 to over 70 years today. That's literally doubled the lifespan of Tibetans. Wow. But this guy barbecued himself because he wanted them to live only 35 years. It's an insane thought because this dude obviously doesn't like this. How radicalized do you have to be? Housing and utilities. The lowest classes, particularly the Nangtang domestic slaves who previously slept in stables or kitchens, were allocated their own farmland and homes. Later housing programs modernized rural homes, connecting them to electricity and running water. Wow. Listen to this. These serfs who previously slept in stables with cattle or kitchens were allocated their own farmland and homes. That is under the Communist Party of China, forcing them to live like humans with dignity. And y'all are still free Tibet. What, you want them to sleep in farm stables or kitchens again? Without schooling, without being a master over their own lives? It must hurt that your estate has been confiscated and given to the ones that you oppressed and exploited. I get it. But those times, you have to come to the realization that if that happened to your family weren't good people, my friend. And you should be disgusted by the fact how they have treated Tibetans. 3. Replacement of traditional legal codes with secular law. Oh, this one is going to be a beauty. With Tibet's integration into the People's Republic of China, traditional legal codes such as the 13 Code and 16 Code were declared entirely invalid and repealed. Equality before the law. Oh my God. And this dude barbecued himself because he does not agree with this. The Chinese constitution and criminal law replaced class-specific punishment and the life prizes. Legally, former serfs were granted the exact same rights and responsibilities as former aristocrats. Abolition of corporal punishment, physical mutilations such as gouging out eyes, cutting off noses or ears, and public torture were strictly banned and criminalized. The authority to administer justice was stripped from local nobles and monastic leaders and transferred exclusively to public courts. Wow. And y'all against this? Property rights. New laws protected the right of farmers and nomads to keep, consume, or sell the yields of their own land, rather than handing it over as a tax to a feudal lord. And y'all against this? Do you understand when you say Free Tibet that 95% of the Tibetans living in Tibet are thinking, so you want me to be in shackles? So you want a serf lord or a landlord to gouge out my eyes, cut off my nose, or whatever. And that is why it's so important to understand the history before you start screaming BS and supporting something that you might not support if you would know the truth. The official, so the two perspectives on this transition. While this modernization is praised by historians and the government for ending oppressive feudal system and delivering material progress, it remains a central subject of the geopolitical debate. Well, that's kind of funny because you never see the West or Western people from Western governments applauding China for putting an end to serfdom and feudalism and these horrible practices against the Tibetan people. Never. But hey, it is Google AI, so it must be a little bit biased. But it's okay. That is also why I used it, to show you that it is not CCP propaganda. The official view focuses on the liberation of millions of people from institutional slavery, the dramatic rise in literacy, and the creation of a modern society where the basic rights and living standards of ordinary people are guaranteed. The diaspora critic view, so this is how they see it, acknowledges the material and infrastructure progress, but argues that the transition resulted in the loss of traditional theocratic autonomy and that the secular legal system is primarily structured to maintain the political control of the Communist Party over the region. Crimea River. And what was the other legal system for? The legal system that you could gouge out other people their eyes, cut off their noses. What was that system for? So you serfs could never become anything more than what they were. It's horrible. Oh, it's so horrible that they are now all equal to the law because it's CCP control. It's a BS argument. 95% of the Tibetans in Tibet, living in Tibet, are so happy that those days are over. And if you now know this history, there is no one with a normal, sane mind that could dispute that unless you are talking in favor of landowners, aristocrats, and those old BS people in charge, the 5% that were oppressing Tibetans and made their lives horrible. Just imagine you living among cattle in a stable. Just think of somebody is taking your life, and instead of being punished according to the law, well, they were punished according to their law that these diaspora critics like so much, but then they give a little bit of money to the landowner, not even to your family. But when it's the other way around, when you lose your mind because of this way of living that you are being so oppressed and you take the life of a landlord, your entire family is going to suffer and have to pay the weight in gold. Just horrible and disgusting. If you are a diasporic critic, it's disgusting. And it goes against all Buddhist values. This is what you call free Tibet? I'm going to say it because it's horrible. Every time when I read these kind of things, I get upset again. How can you be so despicable to people? These are other sentient beings. Free Tibet. I wish I could do that. But Mao already did. Please like the video, share, and if you have not yet, then follow. And as always, have a great day. Your favorite half Chinese. I'm going to take a shower because I need to cool down. Have a great day.